Hey peeps, how's life? I thought that to change up the pace of my really sad, soppy videos that were dribs and drabs of this year, and I'd really try to probably bring everything a little bit together in this particular video to end the year off in general. 2020, what a fucking shit show. That's pretty much putting it mildly for me. Those that know me know that I absolutely love shows like Gilmore Girls. I have a Christmas present, from my daughter this year, which I drink as much coffee as the Gilmore Girls, which I shouldn't because coffee is really bad for me. And looking up because I know that I'm meant to not be drinking it as much as I do. So I have tried to cut down. I really have. But yeah, I have this passion of American sitcoms like Gilmore Girls. At the moment, I'm binge watching Shameless, which is what's going to help me sort of actually do this video today because it has sort of really sparked a lot of thoughts for me around addiction and how it is actually in everyday lives. Now, a show like Shameless is the extreme, really. It's the extreme of the varying degrees of addiction, which is what I'm about to get into. And it's put into a format that thankfully they do have some light humour to it, that you're able to not feel so heavy after watching it. I actually have to admit that I haven't been able to watch Shameless up until now properly, because when it first came out, it was just too triggering for me. Triggering. I'm going to do some videos next year around words and things that have become quite complacent in society, to do with mental health, and in particular to do with therapy. The word triggered is one such word that seems to be a very challenging word to use around most folks still, because you're into that therapy shit, triggers, like it's been made fun of probably a little bit too much, that it's detrimental to people's ongoing therapy, to be honest. So if you are one of those peeps that makes fun of those of us who use the word triggered in the right way, for the right reasons, I do ask that you stop, please. It's not helpful. It undermines therapy in general. And there's other things that you can have a laugh at. Getting back to Shameless and talking about the humour, is that I initially couldn't watch it, even though it was quite a light-hearted show, and I love shows that are built around that. Like I said, I'm a Gilmore Girls fan, die-hard fan, ridiculously so. My daughter grew up on watching that show, and so did my son. My son will often tell people the story about the fact that he knows the theme song inside and out, and it is actually quite comforting to him at times because he's so used to hearing it. Shameless is just one of those sitcoms that's quite intense to watch, and in quite a distressing way for me, it mimicked a lot of issues that I myself was going through and have gone through over the course of my 43 years of this planet. I think the hardest thing, though, and hence the name with the shameless, is that it is shameful. Talking about addiction is a shame feeling that you will feel. Watching it is, when you're in addiction, is definitely something that's not easy to do, to be confronted with something that replicates your life. with them adding the humour to it does make that easier to watch for me nowadays. I'm not going to say it's easy for me to watch this show at the moment and binge watch it, because it does bring up an intense array of thoughts for me. And those that know me know that I'm an extreme overthinker. And often that those thoughts will induce a feeling for me that I don't like. And I can feel the stress of a situation come on when I start to. I tell my son recently that I've been making up a scenario in my head about I've got something going on in my personal life with somebody, and I keep up making up these scenarios in my head about what's going on, and I hurt my own feelings because really I'm an overthinker, so I'm just taking it too far. I'm putting a lot of energy into thinking about this particular matter, and I want it to change. So much so that I go into hurting my own feelings by, imagining these worst case scenarios. And I think with this scenario of watching something like Shameless, I'm in that mindset where I will hurt my own feelings when I'm particularly watching, the parents, and the mother in particular, who is absent, from the children's lives, and the children don't respect her or trust her. Trust, the biggest thing, that they're skeptical and things like that. And it's that there is something that I really, really feel a lot of pain myself around the things that I have put my kids through. The moments in their lives where they have felt that nobody was going to help, that nobody was coming to save us. No one was coming to save Mum. No one was going to come and stop this shit. But Mum wasn't going to stop this shit. What the fuck? The moments that my kids were going through that, how I know that the feeling that I must have induced on them and produced on them was because I lived it myself. My father is a chronic alcoholic. He has been diagnosed over the years with varying different mental disorders. I'm not sure which diagnosis he's up to now because he hasn't been in my life for the last few years. That's something that I will be looking at changing in 2021. However, at the moment, my own sobriety still comes first. Getting back to his addiction was the one that was very prominent in our lives. It's the one that people were talking about within our family, substantially. It was still always, oh, Jeffrey, things like that with my father, where it was just always a stressful time, whenever people were talking about him, to be honest. It was always stressful. It always felt stressful. And it was just hard. He abducted my sister and I drunk from after school one afternoon. When I was quite young, we had just relocated interstate, and he didn't handle things very well. Neither, did my mother, to be honest, with their breakup. And one afternoon, he swiped my sister and I, left one sister behind, couldn't quite get her into the car before my mother actually did sweep in to try to stop it from happening, and proceeded to drive us across the country with a bottle of Bacardi rum between his legs, as he drove us at ridiculous speeds across the country over the course of the next couple of days, before the police and my mum caught up with him. As I said, his mental health was prominently an issue within our childhood, or within my childhood. I can only speak for myself. And its effects, though, like, I'm feeling quite stressed just talking about it, was catastrophic in the lives of myself and my family, still to this day. The other scenario I have in my life that's very challenging is the subdued addictions and mental health issues within my family, that the high functioning scenarios that exist within my family that are ignored, so much so that to protect my sobriety and to protect my mental health, I have, as you guys know, I've had to move this year and had to do various things that took my focus away from studying, took my focus away from developing my mental health coach business any further, because I had to protect my sobriety, I had to protect my children, and I had to continue to walk my own recovery path pretty much 24/7 to keep myself safe. Saying a lot, sorry. That's because I'm trying to make sure I stay focused. What I want to talk about, it's been a scenario that's probably been the hardest to date, because dealing with secrets, dealing with lies, dealing with people who are not truthful to you when you're trying to walk your truth in sobriety and just walk the right line, for me in itself is been probably the most challenging. I'm not finding the words right. I've really not coped very well with the secrets and the lies of other family members within my direct sphere presently. And because of they don't have an understanding of recovery, and because they refuse to seek mental health education and their own therapy in order to participate better in having associations with me, having confrontations with me, having conversations with me, dealing with me, I have had to really put extreme, firm boundaries in place, to which they haven't liked. Because they've not respected those boundaries, then I've had to speak up about this is going on, and I've had to voice that I am not feeling safe, this is not okay with me, to which they don't like. To also protect and defend myself, I've had to bring an awareness around the secrets and the lies, and the fact that perhaps these people are not looking in the mirror themselves at their actions, and not willing, as I said, to take on any type of therapy or mental health education to learn about perhaps what they're contributing to the scenario that's causing it to be quite a contentious, negative one that we, still to this day, that we're unable to, be in the same. I'm unable to be in the room with them. I'm going to read something from Russell Brand's recovery. So, with everything that's been going on for me and me needing to focus on my own recovery, that's exactly it. This is, generally the setup for me as a daily rule is that I will do up to 7 hours of personal spiritual study, personal recovery work, personal self-love every day. That's structured, 7 hours roughly, structured into my day to keep me really focused, keep my mind working through the pain and the issues that are at hand, and the fact that I have to continue to confront them instead of pushing them down, because that's what I'll do otherwise. I'll push these feelings that I've got around what's happening in my life down, and that's when it's dangerous territory. That's when I can't contain it, because it's, you imagine there's like a ball of, okay, can of soda pop. All those bubbles have got to go somewhere. If you keep shaking the crap out of it, all of those, that's just, yep, that's me. So if someone keeps prodding and poking at things with me, I shut down, then I explode. To stop that from happening, I have to do this type of work, like I said, up to 7 hours a day personally for me right now. And it can be very tiring to the brain at times. Anyway, I'm going to read Russell Brand's Recovery. Pretty much an essential book if you are suffering from any type of addiction that you are aware of and you identify with. This is the one that you want to read. Okay, I've got Alcoholic Anonymous up there, I've got NA up there, all those sorts of things. That's all of that put into one book, bogeyfied a bit, bit of slang, bit of swear words. Still talks about spirituality, still talks about a lot of the same things, the fact that you've got to deal with your ego self and so forth and so on. It's just put into a modern format and it applies to all addictions. Here in our glistening cytel of limitless reflecting screens, we live on the outside. Today we awaken and instantly and unthinkably reach for the phone. Its glow reaching our eyes before the light of dawn, it bulletins dart into our minds before even a moment of acknowledgement of this unbending and unending fact: you are going to die. You and your children and everyone you love is hurtling towards the boneyard. I know, you know, we all know, but because it yields so few likes on Facebook, we purr on in blinkered compliance, filling our days with temporary fixes. A coffee here, an eBay purchase there, a half-hearted wank or a flirt, some glistening twitch of pleasure like a silvery slitch on a cadiva, not reading well, guys, bear with me, to tide you over. And you're probably too clever to repose in God, or to pick up some dusty book where the poetry creaks with loathing for women or gays or someone. Maybe if quantum physics could come up with some force or web or string or something that tethers the mystery of something solid, something measurable, you'd think again. But until then, there's nothing but an empty grave and a blank tombstone, chisel poised. So no one's going to blame you if you perch on a carousel of destructive relationships and unfulfilling work, whirling round, never still, never truly looking within, never really going home. Because I had the gift of desperation, because I fucked my life up so royally, I had no option but to seek and accept help. Since being relieved of the more obvious manifestations of my incessant drives and appetites, I have paced backwards like a flunky leaving the queen through a series of less obvious, but not lethal, but still bloody uncomfortable addictions. I believe that the 12 steps and their encompassing philosophy, which I will lay out for you in these pages, will provide is nothing less than a solution to the dissatisfaction of living and dying. To anyone with the balls to do the work, and it is work. Fuck, it's work. It is a personal rebirth, and the journey entails all manner of uncomfortable confrontation with who you are, with who you truly are. Be honest. Have you ever sat down and invented all the things that bug you? Be honest. Have you ever sat down and inventoried all the things that bug you? The childhood skirmishes, seething stings of patriarchal rage, your fury with the government or traffic or global warming or racism, or Apple for continuously changing their charges? When are you planning to become the person you were born to be? To recover? Your connection to an intended path? On holiday? When the kids leave school? When you get a pay rise? Tick tock, chisel poised. I'm not writing this book because I think I'm better than you. I know I'm worse. I have spasmed and splattered through life, motored by unconscious drives, temporarily fixing in a way so crude and ineffectual that the phenomenon is conveniently observable. The condition is extreme, it is identifiable. The less obvious version of addiction is still painful and arguably worse, because we simply adapt to living in pain and never counterance the beautiful truth. There is a solution. We adapt to the misery of an unloving home, of unfulfilling work, of empty friendships and lacquered alienation. The 12-step program, which has saved my life, will change the life of anyone who embraces it. I have seen it work many times with the people with addiction issues of every hue. Okay, so this is where we're going to get into the fact that addiction is something that is not just an alcoholic or somebody that uses heroin or pills. Addiction is applicable to anything that you seek out that causes long-term damage to yourself and to those around you. It can be to shopping, it can be to pornography, it can be to scrolling the internet, to Instagram, it can be to gaming, it can be to food, another huge one that is in our society. Addiction is a scale where you sit on that scale, and how many sort of things you use and to what extent will, obviously be part on who you are as a person and what's your vice, really. Back to it. Okay. I've seen it work many times with people with addiction issues of every hue: drugs, sex, relationships, okay, addiction, peeps, big one. Food, work, smoking, alcohol, technology, pornography, hoarding, gambling, everything. Because the instinct that drives the compulsion is universal, it is adapt to solve the problem of disconnection, alienation, and tepid despair. Because the problem is ultimately being human in an environment that is curiously ill-equipped to deal with the challenges that it entails. We are all on the addiction scale. Those of us born with clear-cut and blatant substance addiction are in many ways the lucky ones. We alcoholics and junkies have minimized our mystery to tiny cycles of craving and fulfillment. Our pattern is easier to observe and therefore, with commitment and help, easier to resolve. If your personal pattern happens to be the addiction equivalent of long-form con trick as opposed to a short grift, it can take ages to know just what your problem is. If you're addicted to bad relationships, bad food, abusive bosses, conflict, or pornography, it can take a lifetime to spot them. Sorry, it can take a lifetime to spot the problem, and apparently a lifetime is all we have. This book is not just about extremists like me. No, this book is about you. Do you have the sense that something is missing, a feeling in your gut that you're not good enough, that if you tick off some action, whether it's eating a Twix, buying some shoes, smoking a joint, getting a good job, you will feel better? If you do, it's hardly surprising, because I believe we live in an age of addiction where addictive thinking has become almost totally immersive. It is the mode of our culture. Consumerism is stimulus and response as a design for life. The very idea that you can somehow make your life all right by attaining primitive material goals, whether it's getting the ideal relationship, the ideal job, a beautiful Berber rug, or 40 quid worth of smack, the underlying idea is, if I could just get X, Y, Z, I will be okay, is consistent, and it is quite wrong. Addiction is when natural biological imperatives like the need for food, sex, relaxation, or status become prioritized to the point of destructiveness. It is exacerbated by a culture that understandably exploits this mechanic as a damn good way to sell Mars bars and Toyotas. In my own blessedly garnish addiction, each addictive pursuit has been an act of peculiar faith that the action will solve the problem. In this book, we will discuss, with me doing most of the talking, how we can overcome our destructive and oppressive habits, be liberated from tyrannical thinking, and move from the invisible inner prison of addiction to the freedom in the present. What makes me qualified for such a task? A task which is different lexicon might be achieving peace, mindfulness, personal fulfillment, or yet grandly entitlement, nirvana, or Christ consciousness. certainly not some personal ethical high ground. My authority comes not from a steep and certain mountaintop of pro-faced righteousness. This manual for self-realization comes not from the mountain, but from the mud. Being human is a me too business. Let's say that again. Being human is a me too process. Business. We are all in the mud together. My qualification is that I am more addicted, more narcissistic, more driven by lust and the need for power and recognition. Every single pleasure giving things that come my way from the cradle in Grays to the Hollywood Chase lounge has been grabbed and guzzled and fondled and fucked and smoked and sucked, and for what? Ashes. Do you sometimes question whether you've even had the option to be right or to be happy? The churning blank march of The churning blank march of metro life seems like the droning confirmation that joy is not an option. Escalators like conveyor belts to a mass grave, grey streets like a yard. Thank God I've not yet been to prison. But when I think about the levels of categorization from worst to least awful, I ponder freedom in general. Worse, being locked alone in solitary cell in a Category A maximum security prison, to less awful with increasing tidbits of liberty through Categories B and C with privileges like kitchen job or a library job, if the Shawshank Redemption is to be believed. Down to an open prison where inmates can cycle into town for a few hours. How much further along this scale of freedom is the life of a man or woman in a drab flat, imprisoned by drug addiction, surviving on benefits, or anyone trapped in a job that they hate, or a kid at school that they'd rather, swerve, which is another slang found for skip school, all living with twisted, anxious guts, or my life, or your life. I'm not saying that it's worse to have a job in London that you hate than to be a Jolly Sea cat prisoner, skipping off to the workshop twirling a spanner. I'm saying that we are all in prisons of varying categories. Hang on to your hat and grab your pistol of cynicism in preparation to gun me down here and now, because I'm about to allude to how a recent experience in my mollycoddled life made me feel like I was in a first-class penitentiary. On tour in Australia, I was travelling in an airlocked privilege from plane to car to a delightful hotel room to arena when struck within by a yearning to escape I couldn't ignore. I arrived in Brisbane at a towering and chintzy hotel and was taken to a room that blasted me with immaculate comfort. But when the door closed behind the perfectly friendly guard, I was alone. I couldn't open a window because you know that these buildings are high and it's dangerous, presumably due to suicide. You cannot get air, you cannot breathe. Russell, I can't understand your lingo sometimes. No. Okay, you cannot get to air. The air you breathe is packaged and one of the few commodities of our wasteful age that is fastidiously recycled. Now, I hope I'm not trying to dress up a tantrum as an epiphany here, but I feel trapped, that I had no way back to nature, nature like the sky inside. There was no way to breathe, to be a human. Suddenly, I felt I had to scramble to have access to natural conditions. In one jarring moment, I felt the G-force of the rapid journey from hunter-gatherer to hunted and gathered. No wonder people hanker for animalism and raw thrills. No wonder people go dogging, hot real breath on a windscreen, torchlights and headlights searching, huddled strangers clutching in the dark for piercing relief of orgasm. No wonder people use porn, hunched over a laptop, grasping and breathless, serious and dutiful like a zealous attendant clerk at a futile task. From this form I escape. I am no longer exempt. I usually laugh afterwards. As soon as the biological objective has been reached, I am ejected from the mindless spell. I look down on myself and sometimes inquire out loud, what was that all about? Like some monkey man coming to consciousness, and I glance back, transcended. And I glance back, transcended. Was that honestly your best idea at solving the way you feel? Now get me some tissues and a Bible. What are we doing when we're masturbating or swallowing mindless food or swilling silly drinks? Who there do we serve? What is the plan? The feeling I had in this hotel is real. The need for connection. The feeling I had when I used drug was real. The need is real. The feeling you have that there's something else is real. What happens when you don't follow your compulsion? What is on the other side of my need to eat and purge? The only way to find out is to not to do it, and that is the novel act of faith. Incidentally, here's how I actually solved the problem. I left the hotel at daybreak. I wish I could say I moved into a community of Indigenous peoples down by the river where we grew our own veg and sang songs about our ancestors, and an elder gave me a tattoo of a rabbit god on my groin and told me I had a real spirit and gave me a tribal name. And it was then I knew my purpose, to connect to the great unknown, to weave the consciousness of man and the consciousness of nature into the perfect tapestry, to tell the story of oneness with such clarity that God herself would come to the aid of the good and nature would rise through torrents and branches, flames and feathers and flood, and deliver us unto heaven, the still and ever-present heaven within. But actually, I just moved to a better hotel with a balcony. Nihilism has quietly risen then. A pessimistic acceptance of pointlessness reigns in every addict. Pleasure, a defibrillator to jerk us along. Now, with 14 and a half years gratefully drug-free, I identify strongly still when I hear of someone who just can't stay clean. I understand. I remember more than remember, I occasionally relive it. I know this won't work, this fix, this drink, this destructive and unlovely act, but it will give me distraction from now, and that is enough. But here's some good news for the fallen, for those of you who are reading this in despair, the junkies, the alkies, the crackheads, anorexics, bulimics, dyspeptics, perverts, codependent, love-addicted, hopeless cases. I now believe addiction to be a calling, a blessing. I now hear a rhythm behind the beat, behind the scratching discordant sound of my constant thinking, a true pulse behind the bombastic thud of the ego drum. There in silence, the offbeat present of another thing. What could it be, this other consciousness? Just the sublime accompanied to my growing nails, pumping heart and rushing blood. These physical and discernible bodily phenomena, do they have a counterpart in a world less obvious? Are we addicts like the animals that evidently preemptively fled the oncoming tsunami, sensing some foreboding? Are we attuned to prickling signals that demand anesthesia? What is the pain? What is it? What does it want? So, that was a couple of pages, about 4 pages, from Russell Brand's Recovery, which pretty much sums up a lot of what I'm, like I said, dealing with personally in my life right now. And that is, dealing with addiction on a scale that we're all susceptible to falling down a rabbit hole. It's just what we take with us when we go is the problem. I think until we're able to identify in society that the only way to solve addiction is to actively talk about it, to be mindful of that process in somebody else's life, to have people feel comfortable to be able to talk about their own issues and their own addictions without being judged or discriminated against. This epidemic is just going to continue on, and it's not going to get better for the people within my own family, let alone the greater good, how I view it. Taking on other people's addictions is something that I am presently very, very mindful of. It's in the sense of, people that are close within my family who are not able to take note of their destruction, however, are very quick to be destructive towards me, um, is where it gets very complicated, it gets very muddy, it gets very murky. And for me, as a person who identifies with, being in recovery, I know that I have to do the hard thing and A, put a healthy boundary in place, B, identify that this isn't making me feel safe, and C, then go about ensuring that I put into action the things that will keep me safe. And that means disconnecting from the harmful things. Like, so for Russell Brand, he was in a hotel room. He didn't feel safe, for whichever reason. He felt triggered. He felt alone. He felt, even though he was in this beautiful hotel room with all these amazing things and, on paper and whatever it's meant to sound good, look good, for him personally, in that moment, in that space, without access to fresh air, without access to the earth, essentially, he didn't want to be there. And it probably, how I identify with it for him is that he probably felt very triggered by it, in the sense that it just reminds him of his party days. It reminds him of, getting high in these luxurious hotel rooms and having prostitutes and all of that sort of stuff, which is why he's talking about, masturbation with his laptop. It's, for him, he felt unsafe. For him, he identified that there was an issue that was not good for him. He voiced it in the best format he could, and that was, he moved down the road to a different hotel that had a balcony. When us addicts in recovery do try to put forward that this is the scenario that's going on for us, this is what we need help with, this is the reasons why, what's hard within, for me personally, of late, of this last 12 months, was asking for that help, giving the reasons why I needed that help, and then dealing with those people's judgments and issues around obtaining that help. All of those things have been a testament and a testing time to my recovery, because I've had to draw on every ounce of my patience at times to not lunge into wanting to educate a person, just still do sometimes, on how to talk to me, and then deal with the process at hand that's giving me the distress and causing the trigger. I have really, really come to notice, for me, that I act out in many ways, whether it be, a mood swing when I'm feeling quite down, which is obviously, for me at the moment, the biggest issue at hand, is that I suffer immense depression when, my body is put through extreme stress for extended periods of time, which is what I essentially went through again this year. And I want to numb that depression, because depression hurts. Depression is dark and it's awful for me. And depression for me looks like I question existence. I question why we're here. I question, what the fuck is this all for? And that's been something that I had to continually keep vocal in order to just release the thoughts. Sometimes just sending them out there and just saying, I am not coping right now. I'm not doing well. This is shit. This is crap. I'm so depressed. Just getting it out verbally, helps to be able to note that this is a dangerous territory for me, that I might start to try to look for something else to medicate myself. So shopping is something that probably has been an obscured one in the past for me. I have a very different understanding around money from the last few years, that shopping really doesn't give me a great deal of satisfaction anymore. So that hasn't been a real issue for me this past 12 months. The issue for me has been sugar in particular, and um, probably falling into the trap of trusting love relationships that aren't really sustainable for me, but I'm addicted to the up down motion, which has been, you know, hard work for me to really, and I have had a very dedicated process with that though, with my therapist, that I really identify uh, that I have an inherent patterned behavior from family orientation of love addiction. And also, I distance myself, so I push people away. So it, have had to very consciously continue to step into a path that is more stable and is going to be beneficial for my long term health, rather than falling into the trap of this person is going to make me feel better and they're going to fix my situation. Um, and if I have sex with them, that's just going to make everything magically better too. I have had to work overtime on recovery to ensure that that in particular stays very well on top of, just as much as my alcoholism, because the two of them actually go hand in hand. I fell into, you know, quite an horrendous toxic cycle when I was married to my second husband, and we were not healthy for each other. Whew, and yeah, it's definitely another vlog by all means. But the alcoholism is that real deep, dark, depressive um, episodes that I went through were at their height within that marriage, and the breakdown of the marriage and the subsequent process of the divorce only solidified at that point in my life the full scope of my addiction. I have spoken in the past about what the darkest moments sort of looked like in my addiction, and I most certainly will be talking about it a hell of a lot more this coming year, as I plan to do a lot more vlogs around addiction in particular, and just run them like addiction meetings that you would see. Most recently, those of you who don't know what recovery looks like, don't know what like an AA meeting or a recovery meeting looks like. If you watch SBS Addicted Australia on demand, Google it, it'll come up. You'll see some snippets of what the process of therapy and recovery looks like, which is literally we sit together, generally in a circle or in a room. If it's larger, you'll have maybe an audience and then someone will come up on the stage. But most organisations now try to create a circle, because we are all on the equal plane within recovery meeting. Yes, there is levels of sobriety, and that needs to be respected. For those that are have got some time up their sleeve, of course they're the ones that the younger, less sober time people have. Not younger in the age, but the youngest, the sobriety time. They'll generally, hopefully, the intention is that they look up to those people who have the strongest over time. And by communicating with each other and sharing our stories, we give hope, we offer connection, and generally it inspires people to identify and action something within their own life to make a change. So for me, these coming 12 months will be much more focused within the addiction recovery meeting style on here for you guys. It might not be as long as this, which is 45 minutes. This is quite long, but I wanted to specifically, I suppose, get talking about Russell Brand's recovery and start to introduce this into my little format here. There has been some really significant changes within the area of late that I've noticed, which has been great. There's some people who are stepping up and who are starting to be a bit more vocal on social media about mental health themselves, and there are some local businesses and organisations that are also contributing to new ideas and formats of helping everybody in, any state of despair they are in, whether it's in an addiction state of despair or whether it's in a mental health illness type of despair. That in itself brings me a huge amount of peace. I'm just so glad that there's way, more talk happening now. 3 years that I've been really starting to advocate on social media, there's just been a fundamental change, a shift happen within my local area, which needed to happen, really needed to happen. Still a long way to go. I myself, unfortunately, haven't been able to deliver on so much of what I initially wanted to set out and do, but the main focus of what I want, which was the online side of things, to help that person who might be lying in their bed at 3 a.m. in the morning questioning their existence. I'm proud of that I've been able to at least achieve that for this area. So, like I said, the next 12 months, I definitely want to step it up. I am hoping to bring more online events, more online recovery meetings. So for those people who suffer from varying disorders like myself, I have a little bit of a fear of going out in public right now. It's not because I'm scared of people, it's just that I'm in a mindset that I don't know how to word it, other than I'm quite confrontational. If someone wants to approach me and start having a personal conversation with me and wants to start asking me about my private life, I am quite sensitive. And so I find that I'm best to just hunker down in my little treetop house that I've got and stick to my own lane in these moments that I feel not so safe. And it's for the people's safety of interacting with me as much as it's my own, because sometimes I'm just not a nice person to interact with. And apparently I don't have to apologize for that, but I don't like being mean. So, I just feel safer to be inside. Hence, more focus for this coming 12 months will be, delivering that online aspect more so, and giving you guys more of the recovery style of therapy where, creating the conversations. I still definitely have the ambition to do lives and things like that. I am also on a situation at the moment which as you guys know, I'm not allowed to work. I'm on a medical go slow, trying to think of a rule they've given me, and just sort of delivering this is really, as much as I can do right now, in the sense of having a conversation and just talking about what's going on in my life is really the extent that I'm able to deliver to you guys. As soon as those things start to lift and I'm able to do more work, you're gonna Whew, those that know me, a little pocket rocket. And, I've just got a bundle of really cool ideas, which I know I can implement, and they'll, hopefully bring some better formats of mental health education to us all that is cost effective but mindful of today's technology and the way of moving forward. The last little thing I suppose I want to finish off this little video today, which is approaching 50 minutes, so it'll pretty much wrap up to an hour, which is what a recovery meeting generally runs on, is that you'll have something for an hour. I really hope that everyone continues on into 2021 with the mindset of our mental health really does make a difference. When we are shitty, when we are in a manky place ourselves, it does overflow onto those around us. It does overflow into our community, overflows into our business. A skanky business dealing person, man, woman, generally, what it's like. They'll have a reputation. Oh gosh, don't deal with that person because you're going to get a headache afterwards. I'm sure some people probably think that about me. I really hope though that this is where things with what we've learned from 2020 and the emergence of things like Russell Brand and people like me who speak out on mental health and addictions and so forth and so on, that we just are a lot more mindful, that we are a lot more patient, and that if you're not feeling good, if you're not feeling like you can be a really nice person today, go and do something that's going to help you to be a nice person. Call in that mental health day and take that mental health day seriously. If you work for a corporation or if you work for yourself or whatever, but you're able to facilitate, I've woken up today, I've got a cranky ass fucking mood on, I'm not down to deal with people, I just think I need to get my shit together, then do it. Take the day to get your shit together. Take the 7 hours. You don't have to be as serious as me, clearly, but take that time to go and digest something different. Binge watch a TV show, but maybe ask yourself, okay, where am I going with my life? What's going on? Why am I cranky? What is the crux of this situation that is making me feel like this? Work that out for yourself. Take that time, then reintegrate yourself back into your regular programming of work and family once you're better. And it's wonderful if you're able to say to your family and your loved ones, hey, I'm really not in a good headspace right now. There's something going on for me that I really need to work on and I really need to figure out. And, I know I'm snapping and I know that I'm cranky and I know that, I'm not sleeping well. So I'm going to go and figure out why that's happening. And I'm just going to take a day or so to do that. Do it. Just go and do it. 2021, we've got a lot of opportunities to make shit different. We've learnt a lot this year, guys, and like I said, I can see it online that people are really starting to embrace the fact that mental health is the fundamental basis of our human existence and our soul. So without that being healthy and authentic and real, we're all susceptible to addiction, we're all susceptible to mental health disease. Be good.